Okay. Pekka, thank you for joining me here. So I'm here with Pekka Viljakainen, the advisor to the president of Skolkova. So first I wanted to say thank you for your several years of support of not only Slush, but also Startup Sauna. So you're very important to us. Thank you again. We posted a recent video on our website where you describe a little bit of Skolkova. So you use words like Disneyland or a fast track. So can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, thanks. First of all, I want to thank you for your greetings about the support for Startup Sauna and this whole project. I have to tell you honestly that when I was in a big company with the 20,000 colleagues, and I heard first from Peter and Miki Kuusi about Startup Sauna and Slush, like so many other boring old businessmen, I was thinking that, okay, nice, that there are young people gathering together drinking beer, but it's not relevant. And how wrong I was, because so many innovations are actually happening here. I have learned it afterwards, but first I want to tell you that I made a mistake and I have corrected my mistake. But what comes to Skolkova? Skolkova is a Russian Federation level program. We have a Skolkova village, which is close to Moscow, but actually we are using our brand, our learnings, our best practices across the Russia. And calling it as a fast track means that people has an assumption that going to Russia, it's kind of an ultra-bureaucratic process. For example, starting an R&D operation. I mean, open the bank account. All the guys and girls who have done business with Soviet Union in the 70s or 60s or 80s or 90s in Russia tell that it takes years. No, well, it takes 30 days.
Oh, fantastic. So you're also an advocate of entrepreneurship. So you posted on a blog last month. You talked about activating the startup genre. So what is it about startups or that startup mentality that you hope to cultivate most?
Well, I said yesterday in the opening and in the press conference, which actually many people in the Twitter commented, that I think that the biggest problem in Russia is kind of a mistrust between the people. So organizing this kind of event in Russia, it's quite easy, but you have to do it only from the top down, that the president orders and then it happens. When actually the roots of this kind of events is down from the bottom up, so to say, and like Mr. Katainen said, that the government's role is to stay away from this whole movement. So in other words, you need to have a trust that you share your experience, you share your success, you share your failures, and you build a network of companies together, and you build a network of investors together, and you build a network of journalists together writing about it. And this is a kind of a weakness, and I and we, as a Russian Federation, we want to make this society happen, not only in Moscow, but across Russia.
Okay, thank you. So there are almost 100 startups from Russia here at Slush. So can you tell me what are they here to do, and how does this event help them to do that?
We are here for 3 reasons. We are here primarily to learn. If you were watching many of the Russian startups last year in Slush, we had here 150 people altogether, perhaps 60 companies. And then you compare the quality of the best companies year after, you can see a hell of a difference. So the learning has happened. That's one. So startups needs to learn a lot about marketing, promotion, pitching, and so forth. They don't need to know about science so much, or project management, or quality. All that stuff is quite okay. But the promotion, marketing, self-confidence is absolutely kind of essential. That's why that's learning is one. Secondly, we want to understand, not as a startups, but as a bureaucrat like me, how to make this society happen. What are the roles? So we want to openly copy the best practices from Startup Sauna, from Slush, from other events around the world to make our events and our way of collaboration good. And then thirdly, yes, there is a lot of investors, Finnish investors, American investors, Japanese investors, and they watch the investments globally. And we just want to show them what kind of companies we have in Russia. Russia is the biggest internet market in Europe, bigger than Germany, bigger than UK, and there are great companies and great opportunities. So why the investors should kind of skip Russia when they do the investment? So these three things.
Thank you. You might be considered sort of a gardener of this sense of community. And so you've built a community around fear. You're also trying to be an advocate for a sense of community around entrepreneurship, but on a global level. So what are some of the ways that you're trying to build that feeling of community?
Yeah, so because you made a perfect pronunciation, but perhaps I heard it wrongly. So I was building the community, no fear, not on fear. So it's a major difference. But actually, the community means for me that people are voluntarily joining it. And for example, No Fear Leadership Community, everything started that I was starting to write down a PDF document about my own mistakes as a leader for the past 25 years. So the PDF document was even called Pekka's fuck-ups. And I was writing, and then I shared with some colleagues in China, in Russia, in Finland, in US, in my teachers in IMD Business School, and then they said that, hey, you should publish a book. I said, okay, it's kind of crazy, but why not? And then after that, people started to communicate. A lot of business leaders wanted to have talking about their failures. I said, no, okay, it's like you come out from the closet, so why? Why not? And in the same way, I'm not a very great building of communities, but I have learned from Startup Sauna guys, from Mighty Eagle and others, that if you just start dreaming and doing heavily, you can do miracles. And I think this kind of a voluntary-based communities are actually driving a lot of innovations and a lot of economy. And yesterday, for example, when the Prime Minister of Finland and Deputy Prime Minister of Russia was there, starting from their clothes, we want to signal every single step that yes, of course there are a certain amount of formalities, but the future is with relatively relaxed, relatively voluntary-based, and very business-oriented, goal-oriented way of working, and communities are serving that purpose extremely well.
Great. How would you describe the tolerance toward failure in Russia?
Sorry.
How would you describe the attitude toward failure in the Russian Federation?
No, well, in Russia, my grandfather, as you probably know, was one of the founders of Nokia. He is one of the stubborn Viljakainen, a stubborn engineer called Viljakainen, it's mentioned even in Nokia history book. And he said to me when I was like 5 that, Pekka, remember that the Finnish engineer rather commits a suicide than makes a mistake or admits a mistake. We rather commit a suicide. And I remember that as a 5-year-old Pekka, it sounded like interesting. I think a lot has happened in 35 years, but in Russia also, starting from the system in many ways, roots, people spend enormous amount of time of hiding the failure. And those who actually then tell that, okay, guys, I made a failure, try to avoid it in your company, or try to avoid it in your startup or your department in a organization, even in Skolkovo or at Skolkovo. It sucks, and that's why so many mistakes are repeated. So yeah, I think Finland-Russia has not so much of difference in this fundamental thinking, but I think that the young generation, which is highly presented here, I have high hopes that we can admit our mistakes and learn from those. And I, as an old fart, I can actually be as one of the role models of that.
Great. How about switching gears to the climate of foreign investment in Russia? How would you describe that?
Well, if you ask in the top-level investors all over the world, do you want to invest to Russia or are you interested in Russia? They say yes, but they will invest only on oil and gas because it's like a cash machine and Russia is known about it. Then if you talk about investing for startups, they said that maybe, but investments are so small that the needed bureaucracy and the risk is so big that it sounds like work. And it's true. Historically, it is true. But actually, what makes Russia interesting is that the valuations of the companies is relatively tempting. Moscow is very heated, St. Petersburg is very heated, but if you go to the other million cities, Novosibirsk, Yekaterinburg, Krasnoyarsk, and so forth, you can find extremely good teams and talents with the decent valuation where you can come in, help them to grow, and then also grow the valuation. So investment climate as such, I don't see any problem on investing on high-tech companies because there are issues like corruption, issues like this kind of a gray economy are relatively small because in the knowledge business there is absolutely nothing except the brains, so to say. And even if everything goes wrong, you can take the team and you can move it to Helsinki or wherever. So the risk is low than building €1 billion factory there. So I think it's getting better, and it's a lot about awareness to tell what it is really about.
And you've called Finland Singapore. Tell us a bit about that.
Actually, I read today, my mother, which is the only person in the world whom I'm afraid of. My mother called me and said that, Pekka, you have called yesterday in public Finland as a country of Mickey Mouse, a Mickey Mouse country. You should not do it. And I said to mother, yes, mother, I will never call it anymore. Perhaps to Singapore as a metaphor, as it's better than a country of a Mickey Mouse country. I just wanted to tell that from the Russian standpoint, I'm 4 days a week, 5 days a week in Moscow. And if you sit there in Moscow and you watch even the map from the eyes of the Russians, Finland is like a small spot up in the north, if you turn the kind of globe. And that's why it sounds like a small piece. Singapore is in Asia a city and a region with actually no possibilities to survive theoretically. Small, not so much of national reserves, not great universities historically, but they are heavy traders, and they have made it like a fast track that everything goes kind of fast, it's safe, hospitals, schools, and so forth. And it's a kind of a role model. And I think as a Finnish taxpayer that we could use a similar kind of Finland as a Singapore of Europe. We have a lot to do because if you, for example, want to come to Finland, it doesn't go like this, having schools and kindergartens and all the bureaucracy done. But I think we should get there to be competitive in Europe.
And then last question about the Slush event itself. What have been the personal highlights for you, and then what are you looking forward to in today's agenda?
No, after 24 hours, I can tell you that I'm damn tired. I'm desperately waiting that this ends, not because of the companies, but it's a quite hectic program here. But I think it's good that it's hectic. It's in a very condensed way. So many possibilities to meet people, to learn from others. I mean, learning is the most important thing. I hope that everybody here will think when they go home, wherever they live, what did they see? What did they learn? What was something unique? What was something mistakes to avoid? Because that is the purpose. This is about learning and also enjoying.
I mean, certainly, I think having you all on stage and in those sweatshirts is certainly a highlight for many of us. So, but I think we'll wrap up here, and just I wanted to say, it's cold, it's dark here in Helsinki in November, but thank you again for being such a warm, giving presence to us in our community here. Yeah. So, thank you very much, Pekka.
Thank you.